You think you're broke, but you're not. I know that probably sounds like something a rich person would say right before they tell you to just stop buying coffee. And I promise this isn't that. I'm not about to tell you that your $5 latte is the reason you can't afford a house. That's not the conversation we're having today. But I want you to stay with me for a second because what I'm about to share with you completely changed the way I think about money. And not in a motivational poster kind of way, in a real, practical, kind of unsettling way. The kind of thing that once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. So let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you checked your bank account and actually felt okay? Not stressed, not anxious, not immediately calculating whether you can make rent. Just okay. For a lot of people, that feeling doesn't come very often. Maybe it never comes at all. And here's the wild part. That feeling has very little to do with how much money is actually in your account. I know that sounds strange, but stick with me because we're going to pull this apart piece by piece. And by the end of this, I think you're going to look at your financial life very differently. Let's start with the basics. There are people earning $20,000 a year who feel fine about money. Not rich, not comfortable in the traditional sense, but fine, at peace, not constantly anxious. And there are people earning $150,000 a year who feel absolutely broke, who stress about every purchase, who can't sleep at night thinking about their finances, who feel like no matter how much comes in, it's never enough. How is that possible? Same planet. Same general cost of living pressures, wildly different incomes. But sometimes the same feeling at the end of the day, that gnawing, exhausting sense that there's just not enough. That disconnect, that gap between what you have and how you feel about what you have. That's what this video is really about, because I think most people who feel broke are actually dealing with something much more specific. Something that has nothing to do with their salary and everything to do with their perception, their patterns, and their psychology. And once you understand what's actually going on, you get real power back, not fake motivational power, actual, usable, today, you can start this power. Okay, let's get into it. First, let's talk about the illusion. There's this idea most of us carry around without ever really questioning it. It sounds like this: I feel broke, therefore I am broke. And we treat that like a fact, like a medical diagnosis, like something that's just true about us the way our eye color is true about us. But feeling broke and being broke are two completely different things. Being broke is a financial reality. It means you literally do not have enough money to cover your basic needs: food, shelter, utilities. The math doesn't work. That's a real, serious situation that deserves real, serious attention. Feeling broke is something else entirely. It's an emotional and psychological state. It's that low-grade anxiety that lives in the back of your mind. That sense of scarcity. That voice that says you can't afford that, even when technically you can. That fear of looking at your bank account, that weird shame spiral when you spend money on something enjoyable. And the uncomfortable truth is, millions of people who are not actually broke, by any practical definition, feel broke almost constantly. They have jobs, they pay their bills, they have food in the fridge, they maybe even have some savings. But the feeling doesn't match the reality. So where does that feeling come from? That's where it gets interesting. Let me introduce you to something called the money fog. This isn't a technical term, I just think it's the best way to describe it. The money fog is the state most people live in when it comes to their finances. They know roughly how much they earn, they know roughly how much their rent is, but beyond that, it's fuzzy, unclear. There's this ambient sense of spending happening all around them, but they're not really tracking it, not really seeing it, not really in control of it. And here's the thing about fog. It's terrifying even when there's nothing dangerous in it. You can be standing in an empty field on a foggy morning and feel completely disoriented. Not because something bad is happening, but because you can't see clearly. That's what financial anxiety often is. It's not always about the actual numbers. It's about the lack of clarity, the not knowing, the feeling that money is slipping away and you're not quite sure where it's going or whether it's going to run out. And this fog is not an accident. This fog is the normal default state for people who never learned how to manage money, which, let's be honest, is most of us. Because where exactly were we supposed to learn this? In school? Please. Most schools don't teach personal finance. We weren't sitting in class learning about cash flow and savings rates. We were learning algebra and the French Revolution. So we grew up, got jobs, started earning money, and then kind of just winged it. We figured it out as we went. Which means we picked up habits from our parents, or from our friends, or from what we saw on social media. And a lot of those habits, not great. But here's what I really want you to understand. The fog is not permanent. The fog is not who you are. The fog is just a lack of information and a lack of systems. And those are both fixable things. Now, let's talk about the real problem. Because I think when people feel broke, they immediately go to one of two conclusions. Conclusion one, I don't earn enough. If I just made more money, everything would be fine. Conclusion two, I spend too much, I'm bad with money, I have no discipline. And look, sometimes one of those things is true. There are absolutely situations where income genuinely is the limiting factor. If you're working a minimum wage job in a city with skyrocketing rent, that's a real problem. We're not pretending otherwise. But for a lot of people, maybe most people who feel constantly broke, neither of those two conclusions is quite right. Or rather, they're incomplete. They're missing the actual root cause. The real problem, most of the time, is one of three things. And usually, it's a combination of all three. The first is spending patterns. Not just how much you spend, but the way you spend. The unconscious spending. The subscriptions you forgot about, the little purchases that don't feel like purchases because they're digital or they're small or they're just part of your routine. The I deserve this spending that happens after a hard week. The social spending, the dinners, the rounds of drinks, the group trips, where you feel like you can't say no without seeming like a buzzkill. None of these things feel like spending in the moment. They feel like living. But at the end of the month, when you look at what actually left your account, it can be genuinely shocking. The second thing is lack of awareness. And this is different from spending patterns, even though they're related. Lack of awareness is the money fog in action. It's not knowing your actual numbers, not knowing how much you spend on food every month, or on entertainment, or on random Amazon purchases that seemed totally reasonable at the time. It's the absence of a clear picture. And here's why this matters so much. You cannot fix what you cannot see. If you don't know where your money is going, you can't make intentional decisions about it. You're just kind of hoping it works out. And hope is a lovely thing, but it's a terrible financial strategy. The third thing, and this one is sneaky, is lifestyle inflation. Have you ever gotten a raise and then a few months later found yourself feeling exactly as broke as you did before the raise? Yeah, that's lifestyle inflation. It's the phenomenon where your expenses automatically expand to fill your income. You earn more, so you spend more. Not because you decided to, not because you planned it out, just because it happened naturally. Because the baseline shifts, because what used to feel like a luxury starts to feel like a necessity. You used to order coffee at home, now you stop at the coffee shop every morning. You used to live with roommates, now you have your own place. You used to fly budget airlines, now that feels unbearable. These aren't bad choices necessarily, but if they happen automatically, without intention, without you deciding, yes, this is worth the trade-off, then they're lifestyle creep, and they will keep you feeling broke no matter what you earn. But okay, why do we do this? Why do we inflate our lifestyles? Why do we spend unconsciously? Why do we feel broke even when we're not? Let's talk about the why, because this is where it gets really psychological. And honestly, kind of fascinating. Part of it is social comparison. And I don't just mean in a shallow keeping up with the Joneses kind of way. I mean it at a deep, evolutionary, biological level. Human beings are social creatures. We evolved in groups. And in those groups, our standing, where we sat in the social hierarchy, was literally a matter of survival. Being part of the group meant safety. Being excluded meant danger. So our brains developed a very powerful sensitivity to social comparison. We are wired to notice where we stand relative to other people. It's not vanity. It's ancient survival machinery. Now, for most of human history, your comparison group was pretty limited. Your village, your neighborhood, the people you actually knew and saw in person. And those people were probably pretty similar to you in terms of lifestyle and wealth. So the comparison didn't drive you crazy because everyone was roughly in the same boat. Then social media happened. Now your comparison group is everyone, every person you follow, every influencer you've ever accidentally stumbled across, every friend from high school who seems to be doing way better than you, every couple posting their vacation photos, every person your age who just bought a house or started a business or got a huge promotion. Your brain doesn't know that Instagram is a highlight reel. Your brain doesn't know that most people only post the best version of their lives. Your ancient social comparison machinery just sees other people have more than me. Other people are living better than me. I am falling behind. And that feeling, that very real, very uncomfortable feeling of falling behind, gets interpreted as being broke, even when objectively you're not. Think about that for a second. You could be sitting in a perfectly fine apartment with food in your kitchen, money in your account, wearing decent clothes, feeling genuinely broke because you've just spent the last 30 minutes scrolling through other people's vacations. That's not a character flaw. That's just what happens when you give a brain that evolved for small tribal comparisons an unlimited feed of the world's most curated highlight reels. And then there's the expectations problem. Every generation enters adulthood with a set of expectations, often inherited from the generation before them, about what a normal adult life should look like. And for a lot of Gen Z and millennials, those expectations were set by watching a world that no longer exists. Your parents or grandparents bought a house in their 20s, had stable jobs with pensions, could support a family on one income. Those stories were real, but they were products of a specific economic era that is genuinely meaningfully different from the one we're living in now. And when reality doesn't match those expectations, when you're 30 and you can't afford a house and you feel behind, that gap feels like failure. It feels like you're doing something wrong. It creates this persistent background noise of, I should have more by now. Why don't I have more by now? That's a big part of what feeling broke actually is. It's not just about money, it's about expectation mismatch. Okay, now let's get into the psychology properly. Because there are two concepts I want you to really understand, and once you do, I think a lot of things will click into place. The first is hedonic adaptation. Big words, simple idea. Hedonic adaptation is the human brain's remarkable ability to return to a baseline level of happiness no matter what happens to you, good or bad. You get a raise, you're thrilled, you feel amazing for about 2 weeks. Then the new salary becomes normal. The new salary is just what you make now, and you're right back to wherever you were emotionally before. You buy a new car, you love it. You drive it everywhere, you tell people about it for maybe a month. Then it's just your car, just the thing you get into every day. The thrill is completely gone. You move into a nicer apartment, it feels luxurious for a few weeks. Then it's just where you live. This is hedonic adaptation. The brain normalizes, always, without exception. No matter how much you acquire, no matter how much your circumstances improve, the brain resets to baseline. And this has a devastating effect on how we relate to money, because it means that no amount of more will ever permanently fix the feeling. You earn more, you spend more to match, you adapt, and you're back where you started emotionally. But now your expenses are higher, so the math is actually worse. People who don't understand hedonic adaptation spend their entire lives chasing a feeling that will always be just one raise, one purchase, one upgrade away. They keep running, but the finish line keeps moving, and they never quite figure out why they can't get there. The second concept is present bias, and this one explains so much about why we make the financial decisions we make. Present bias is the brain's tendency to prefer immediate rewards over future rewards, even when the future reward is objectively, mathematically better. Here's an example. I'll offer you $10 right now, or $15 1 week from now. Most people take the $10 today, even though waiting a week for $15 is a 50% return on your patience, which is insane. No investment is going to give you 50% in a week. Your brain just really, really prefers now. And this is not stupidity, this is deeply wired. For most of human evolutionary history, waiting for rewards was genuinely risky. The future was uncertain. If you could eat now, you ate now. Who knew what tomorrow would bring? But we're not living in that world anymore. We're living in a world where delayed gratification is one of the most powerful financial tools available, where compound interest rewards patience over decades, where the ability to save now and spend later is literally the difference between financial stability and financial stress. But your brain didn't get that memo. Your brain still wants the immediate reward, still wants to buy the thing today rather than save it for something bigger tomorrow, still chooses the comfortable spending now over the future security later. And when you combine hedonic adaptation with present bias, you get a brain that is, almost by design, working against your financial well-being. Not because you're weak or irresponsible, because you're human. Because these are features of the human brain, not bugs. They just don't serve us very well in a modern consumer economy that is specifically designed to exploit them. Here's the thing that really gets me. Companies spend billions of dollars every single year studying exactly how to use hedonic adaptation and present bias against you. One-click purchasing, limited time offers, buy now, pay later. Subscription models that are easy to start and a pain to cancel. The entire architecture of modern consumer spending is built around making it as frictionless as possible to spend now and as frictionless as possible to avoid thinking about the future. So when you feel like you have no self-control around money, remember, you are not fighting your own laziness. You are fighting billion-dollar systems that are specifically engineered to make you spend. That's not an excuse, but it is important context. Let me tell you about two people. I'm going to call them Alex and Jordan. They're not real people. They're composites of situations that are incredibly common. See if either of them feels familiar. Alex is 28. She graduated college, got a job in marketing, started at $42K a year. She felt broke then, but figured it made sense. She was just starting out. Then she got a promotion. $55,000. Felt a bit better, got another raise 2 years later. $68,000. And here's the thing, at every single income level, Alex still feels broke. Not just tight, broke. Like there's never enough. Her savings account has basically the same amount in it now as it did when she was making 42,000. How? Lifestyle inflation happened gradually and invisibly. When she started earning more, she moved into her own apartment instead of living with roommates. That was $12,000 more per year right there. She started going out more because she could afford it now. She bought nicer clothes because her job required her to look professional. She got a car because the new apartment wasn't as convenient to transit. She started getting food delivery because she was busier and more stressed. Each individual decision felt completely reasonable, but together, they perfectly canceled out every single raise she ever received. She went from 42 to 68,000 and ended up feeling exactly the same, sometimes worse, because now her baseline expenses are higher, so her financial fragility is actually greater than it was before. Alex doesn't have an income problem. She has a pattern problem that she's never been able to see clearly enough to address. Now let's talk about Jordan. Jordan is 32. He works in tech, makes $95,000 a year. By any objective measure, he should feel comfortable. But Jordan genuinely, sincerely, feels broke. He worries about money constantly. He has some savings, but they never feel like enough. He feels behind all his coworkers who seem to be buying houses and investing and generally having their financial lives together. Jordan's problem is slightly different. It's comparison combined with invisible money management. He's in a social circle where people earn a lot and spend a lot. Expensive dinners, ski trips, nice cars, and Jordan keeps pace with that lifestyle because, well, because he's human, and because opting out feels awkward and isolating. He's also never looked seriously at what he actually spends in a month. He figures since he earns a lot, it'll work itself out. It doesn't. He's spending about $85,000 of his $95,000 income. He has no savings system. He has some money in his 401k from auto enrollment, but that's it. He looks at his account at the end of each month and thinks, where did it all go? And because he doesn't have a clear answer, it just feels like money evaporates. Like he's broken somehow. Like being bad with money is just part of who he is. But Jordan isn't broken. Jordan just doesn't have a system. Jordan has been spending in the dark for his entire adult life, and then wondering why he can't see where he's going. Alex and Jordan are different people with different incomes and slightly different problems. But they share the same core experience, feeling broke despite the numbers not justifying that feeling. And they share the same underlying cause, a lack of awareness and intentionality about where their money actually goes. Do either of those feel familiar? If so, keep watching, because we're getting to the part that actually matters. Here's the core insight I want you to take from this video, and I want you to really sit with it because it's deceptively simple. You don't have a money problem, you have a perception problem and a systems problem. Let me say that again, because I think it's worth hearing twice. You don't have a money problem, you have a perception problem and a systems problem. The perception problem is everything we've been talking about: hedonic adaptation, present bias, social comparison, expectation mismatch. These are the forces that distort how you see your financial reality. They make you feel broke when you're not. They make you feel behind when you're actually doing okay. They make every income level feel insufficient. The systems problem is different. It's the absence of structure, the absence of visibility, the absence of intentionality. Most people don't have a money system. They have a money vibe. They kind of know what they earn, they kind of know their big expenses, and then they just hope the month works out. A system is the opposite of that. A system is, I know exactly what I earn. I know exactly what my fixed costs are. I know exactly how much I'm setting aside for savings and investments before I touch anything else. And I know how much I have left for everything else. That's it. That's the whole system. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be a spreadsheet with 17 tabs. It just needs to exist. Because here's what happens when you have a system, even a very basic one. The money fog lifts. The anxiety doesn't necessarily disappear overnight, but it changes character. Instead of this ambient, shapeless dread, it becomes specific and addressable. I spent more on food than I wanted to this month. I need to adjust that. That's a problem you can actually solve. Shapeless financial anxiety is paralyzing. Specific financial awareness is empowering. And the distance between those two things is mostly just information. Now let's talk about the shift, the actual change. What does it look like in practice? I want to be really clear here. I'm not going to give you a perfect 10-step program and promise it'll solve everything. Financial change is personal. It looks different for different people. What I can give you are principles, things that work because of how human psychology actually functions, not in spite of it. The first shift is from avoidance to awareness. And this is genuinely the most important one. Most people avoid looking closely at their finances because looking closely feels bad. There's a kind of magical thinking in not looking. If you don't see the problem clearly, it doesn't quite feel real yet. You can maintain hope, but avoiding looking never fixes anything. It just lets the problem grow quietly while you look the other way. Awareness means actually knowing your numbers, not approximately. Actually, this week, just this week, try something. Go through your last 30 days of spending, not to judge yourself, not to feel bad, just to see. Look at what you actually spent by category: food, subscriptions, entertainment, clothes, random purchases. Just look. For most people, this exercise is genuinely surprising. Not because they're terrible with money, but because spending in the modern world is designed to be invisible. Digital transactions don't feel like real money leaving your hands. Automatic payments you set up years ago and forgot about are still quietly charging you. That gym membership you stopped using in February. The streaming service you only watch occasionally. They all add up in ways you genuinely can't feel in the moment. Awareness is the foundation. Without it, everything else is just guessing. The second shift is from reaction to intention. Most people are financially reactive. They earn money, it comes in, they spend it as the need or desire arises, and then they see what's left. Saving, if it happens at all, happens with whatever's left at the end of the month. The problem with that approach is that there is almost never anything left at the end of the month, because spending expands to fill available money. This is just human nature. If there's money there, it will find its way out. The solution is to flip the order. Pay yourself first, before you pay for anything else, before entertainment, before eating out, before anything optional. A set amount goes to savings or investments. Automatically, out of sight, out of mind. Not a lot, necessarily. Even 5 or 10% if that's what's realistic right now. But it happens first, not last. This single change, moving savings from whatever's left to comes out first, is maybe the most impactful mechanical change most people can make. And it works specifically because it removes the decision from the moment. You don't have to decide whether to save each month. It's already done. The third shift is from shame to curiosity. This one is subtle but powerful. Most people approach their financial situation with a lot of judgment. I'm so bad with money. I have no discipline. I should be further along by now. That kind of self-talk is not only painful, it's also counterproductive. Because shame leads to avoidance. And avoidance keeps you stuck. Try approaching your money situation like a scientist instead. Not I'm bad with money, but that's interesting. I seem to spend significantly more when I'm stressed. I wonder why that is. Not I have no discipline, but I notice I'm much better at saving when the money is automatically transferred. What does that tell me about how I work? Curiosity is how you learn. Shame is how you hide. Let's get really concrete now, because I know some of you are thinking, okay, this all sounds good, but what do I actually do? Like, tomorrow. What's the first step? Here's a genuinely simple implementation plan. 3 phases. You can start phase 1 literally today. Phase 1 is about visibility. Just seeing, in the next 24 hours, do this. Make a list of every single monthly expense you have. Fixed expenses, rent, phone, insurance, subscriptions, loan payments. Write them all down. Then look at your bank and credit card statements from last month and find your variable spending: food, transportation, entertainment, shopping, everything else. Add it up. Compare it to your take-home income. That gap, or lack of gap, will tell you a lot. If your expenses are creeping very close to your income or exceed your income, you've just identified something real, not to feel bad about, to work with. Also, while you're looking at those subscriptions, actually look at them. When did you last use that streaming service? That app? That membership? I'd be willing to bet there are at least 2 or 3 charges on there you've genuinely forgotten about. Cancel them. Today, right now if you want. That's money that was silently leaving your account every month for nothing. This first phase is about removing the fog. Just seeing clearly. Phase 2 is about building the basic structure, the skeleton of a system. Once you know what you actually spend, you can start making decisions about what you want to spend. This is where you create what some people call a zero-based budget or a spending plan. Though honestly, call it whatever makes it feel less scary. The concept is simple. Every dollar of your income gets assigned a job, a specific purpose. Rent goes here, food goes here, savings goes here, fun money goes here. And those assignments happen at the beginning of the month, not the end. You don't have to be incredibly precise about this. You're not trying to account for every single dollar down to the cent. You're trying to create intention. You're trying to shift from I hope this works out to I have decided how this works. A simple starting framework. After taxes, aim to put about 20% towards savings or debt repayment if you can, less if you genuinely can't right now. Start with something 50% toward needs and 30% toward wants. These aren't magic numbers, they're starting points. Adjust them to fit your actual life. And the most important mechanical action in this phase, set up automatic transfers. The day after your paycheck arrives, money automatically moves to a separate savings account. You don't see it in your main account. You don't make a decision about it. It just goes. This removes your willpower from the equation entirely, which is the smartest thing you can do, because willpower is unreliable and finite, and your brain is always going to find a reason why you need the money right now. Phase 3 is about tracking and adjusting. The ongoing part. Once you have visibility and basic structure, the final piece is just paying attention. Once a week, not every day, because that can become anxiety-inducing. Spend about 10 minutes looking at your spending. Did I stay within my food budget? Did I accidentally overspend somewhere? Do I need to adjust anything? This doesn't have to be complex. Some people love spreadsheets, some people use apps, some people keep a simple note on their phone. The tool doesn't matter, the habit of looking matters. And every few months, do a bigger review. Look at whether your budget categories still make sense, whether your savings rate is where you want it, whether there's anything you can adjust or optimize. That's it. That's the whole system. Visibility. Structure. Tracking. It's not exciting, it's not complicated, and that's exactly why it works. I want to talk about one more thing before we close, and it might be the most important thing of all. What does being broke actually mean? Because I think we've been using this word, broke, in a way that's both too vague and too powerful. It's become this identity, this label we put on ourselves. I'm broke, as if it's a permanent condition. As if it's describing something fundamental about who we are, not just the current state of a manageable situation. And that framing is a trap. When you say, I'm broke, you're not really describing a financial reality. You're describing a feeling, and you're treating that feeling as fixed, as permanent, as something that will require dramatic, probably impossible changes to fix. But what if you reframed it? What if instead of I'm broke, the thought was, I currently don't have the visibility and systems I need to feel financially confident? Or, I've been spending in ways that weren't fully aligned with what I actually want. Or even just, my finances need some attention? Those framings point toward action. They point toward specific, solvable things. I'm broke points toward nothing. It just sits there, heavy and hopeless. Being in control of your money, really in control, is not about how much you earn. There are people earning $300,000 a year who have absolutely no control over their money and feel completely powerless. And there are people earning $40,000 who know exactly where every dollar goes and feel genuinely empowered and secure. Control comes from clarity, from intention, from a system, however simple, that puts you in the driver's seat instead of just reacting to whatever the month throws at you. And here's the beautiful, slightly strange thing about financial clarity. It doesn't just affect your finances. When people get clear on their money, they often find that anxiety in other areas of their life decreases too, because so much of our background stress is connected to financial uncertainty. When that uncertainty shrinks, even a little, there's just more space, more calm, more energy for everything else. That's not nothing, that's everything. Let me also say this directly because I think it needs to be said. Some of you watching this are dealing with genuinely difficult financial circumstances. Incomes that are too low for the cost of living in your city. Debt that feels crushing. Unexpected crises, medical bills, job loss, family situations that derailed things no matter how careful you were. And if that's you, I'm not suggesting that awareness in a savings system will magically fix structural problems. Some financial difficulty is real and it's serious, and it requires real help, resources, support, sometimes policy changes that are beyond any individual's control. What I'm talking about in this video is the layer on top of that. The psychological and behavioral dimension of feeling broke that affects people across almost all income levels. The fog, the comparison, the patterns, that's the territory we've been in today. And wherever you are financially, those things are worth addressing. Because feeling more in control of your money, even when the numbers aren't where you want them, changes things. It changes how you make decisions. It changes how you feel on a daily basis. It changes the story you tell yourself about your future. And the story you tell yourself matters enormously. Because we tend to act in ways that are consistent with how we see ourselves. If you see yourself as someone who's just bad with money, you'll keep making bad money decisions. Not because you're doomed, but because you're acting out the script. But if you start seeing yourself as someone who is learning, who is building better habits, who is getting clearer and more intentional, that story leads somewhere different, somewhere better. So here's where we land. Here's what I want you to walk away with. You think you're broke. But the truth is more specific and more hopeful than that. The truth is that you've been operating in the money fog with borrowed habits and a comparison warped perception and a brain that's working hard against your long-term interests. And that's not a personality flaw. That's just what happens in the absence of information and intention and system. The fix isn't dramatic. It's not a radical lifestyle overhaul. It's not depriving yourself of everything you enjoy. It's not waiting until you earn more money before you start paying attention. The fix is clarity. It's looking at your actual numbers with curiosity instead of dread. It's setting up a basic structure that works with your human brain instead of relying on willpower. It's breaking the habit of spending on autopilot and replacing it with even slightly more intentionality. It's recognizing that hedonic adaptation means more stuff will never fix the feeling, that the comparison feed is lying to you about everyone else's life, that present bias is why saving feels hard, that the system is designed to make you spend. Knowing these things doesn't make you immune to them, but it gives you just enough distance to sometimes choose differently. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a starting point. And the starting point is just this. Actually look at your money this week. Not to punish yourself, not to fix everything at once, just to see clearly, maybe for the first time. Because you can't navigate out of fog without first turning the lights on. And once the lights are on, once you can actually see where you are and where your money is going, you'll find that things are different than you thought. Not perfect, maybe not even close to where you want them to be eventually, but clearer, more manageable, more yours. You are not your bank balance. You are not the feeling of scarcity that follows you around. You are not behind, not broken, not destined to feel this way forever. You just needed a clearer picture, and now you have one. Go turn the lights on.
That wraps up our financial goals overview. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more tips on growing your wealth.